Hello and welcome to the second devlog for Keysight 2. In this one we're going to be talking about some nitty-gritty technical stuff relating to the way that Keysight handles data editing, and then also how those data edits are broadcast back out to the menu and objects. I promise this is important and worth a devlog, trust me. I'm going to need to break out some diagrams for this one rather than just showing you some Keysight menus, so brace for some amazing MS Paint skills. Right, so what happens when you click a button? Well, in Keysight 1, the button would need to be wired up to the relevant bit of data in the preset or wherever. The button changes the data, and that's it. That's where the interaction starts and stops. This Keysight 1 implementation is conceptually very simple and therefore easy to build, but it leads to a lot of issues in time cost when setting up new buttons, and it restricts the function of things down the line. So, for example, this is what it looks like to actually wire up a button to do something. This is the amount of time cost required to set up a button. It's not much, but when you have hundreds of buttons, it definitely adds up. But the way worse problem is that if you have two buttons that edit the same piece of data, clicking one button needs to update the other button's state as well, because otherwise the states will become mismatched. In Keysight 1, this is handled on the button implementation as part of editing the data. So button A will edit both the data, and then it will also communicate to button B to update button B's state. And then if you click button B, then button A is communicated to as well. So they both talk to each other and the data. This is why Keysight 1's automation actions, like changing presets with a MIDI hotkey or WebSockets, those are very restricted. All of the functionality needs to be mirrored for each thing that displays the change that you are making, so that when you perform an automation action with a MIDI hotkey, it also communicates to the menu state and updates all of the stuff that it needs to update. That made adding any automation action really time consuming, because you get like a multiplicative effect of the more actions that do the same thing, the more they all need to talk to each other. Okay, but with that background out of the way in terms of how Keysight 1 works, let's talk about how Keysight 2 just fixes all of this. Instead of everything talking directly to each other, everything goes through something that I am kind of calling the automation layer. This automation layer is essentially a command line interface, and it hosts every possible action that Keysight can take. Buttons then communicate with the automation layer via a command, and then the automation layer decides what to do. Once the automation layer has done something, it'll then trigger an event saying that, hey, I changed this piece of data. Any items that are relevant to the thing that got changed are then set to listen to that event and update accordingly. This includes the button that caused the change in the first place. So the button gets clicked, it fires an action, the action does something, and then the action triggers an event that communicates back to the button. As you might be hearing, this is a lot more work, up front to develop, because I need to build the automation layer relevant to each piece of data, and then also build the buttons themselves. However, it cuts down the implementation time for a button massively, because instead of having to actually program what it does, I just have to give it a command, and then the automation layer handles it. This also makes having multiple buttons that touch the same data completely painless. There is no multiplicative cost, because each button does not need to communicate to every other button. It just communicates to the data, and then the data communicates back to the button, and none of them care how many buttons there are. This automation layer also has massive potential for automation, go figure. This is a topic that I will be covering in the future in its own video when I can actually show it working, but just to kind of fire the imagination a little bit, like what if you could set up in a menu somewhere a new arbitrary command, and that command is randomize the current preset's colors. You could then set a trigger to perform that command via a hotkey. And all of a sudden, you've built your own hotkey for a niche function of the menu. And that's pretty cool, because I did not have to specifically build your hotkey binding to do the thing you wanted it to do. That keeps the menu nice and clean for everybody else who doesn't need a hotkey to randomize the current preset colors. Or let's get more exciting, right? Like maybe you set it to randomize the current preset's colors, then wait 1 second, and then trigger another automation action, that is its own action. So it forms a loop. Now you have a looping color randomizer that randomizes every 1 second. Or what about move the camera between these two sets of coordinates over 5 seconds? Like bam, then you have camera choreography through this automation layer. This automation is making so many things feasible and achievable in a way that was just impossible with Keysight 1. Because with Keysight 1, if you added in a new action to do any of these things, you had to worry about reflecting those changes to everywhere else. But things are now centralized, and nothing needs to communicate to each other, and it keeps everything just clean and quick and easy to implement. Anyway, like I say, all of that is a topic for when it's set up and working. That'll do it for this devlog. Thank you very much for watching. A reminder that if you want to take part in Keysight 2 discussion and give feedback, please join the Discord linked in the description. I regularly post updates, questions, examples, preview builds, all of that stuff gets posted in Discord. Also, this devlog was heavily scripted in a way that the previous two were more off the cuff. Let me know if you prefer this style more or less. But anyway, yeah, until the next one, bye-bye.